What's up? It's your boy Mean Joe Green, aka Prince of the Ghetto. Y'all hit that like button on your way in. I want to talk about some more music today, music artists that is. And first I heard this from Nelly. Nelly said that the early 2000s was the toughest hip hop era ever. And then I was thinking like, he do got a point. But then I just saw Ludacris just, went to his Facebook and posted and said the same thing, saying that he agreed with Nelly, saying the early 2000s was a rough year in hip hop because of all the artists that they had to compete with. And I got to say, I come up in the early 2000s. That was my era. And Nelly, when he first came out, he blew the charts off, and Ludacris, he did the same thing. That was in my younger teenage years. They made me want to get in the game and start rapping. So I have to agree with Ludacris and Nelly. That is my era. And the music that they was coming out with, man, it's still tough to this day. It's still, let's just say some of it is timeless music. Because we can go back and play that old country grammar. We can go back and play Ludacris Chicken and Beer. He still got them still classics and still hits. And it was a rough year. I mean, it was rough in the early 2000s because it wasn't the internet. So really, if your music, we had TV, BET, MTV, your music would have to be on Rap City 106 Top 10 for people to even recognize you. And also back in them days, those videos that they was making like High Weave, they was spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for one video. And that made the artist big. So, the early 2000s, that was a sweet spot in hip hop. My son was even paying $1 million for a video. Because it wasn't no internet. You had to watch TV. They was getting a lot of TV views, and the more views that they got on TV and the votes, some shows we had to vote for an artist, and the artist that got the most votes is the artist that they played. And when we come home from school, the first thing we want to do is watch 106 or Rap City. Hits from the street. We want to see who the top artist is, and we listen to it. That's why on one video back here I said Jay-Z was big, because on TV they just kept showing all his videos, all the songs that he did videos. You'll see Jay-Z. So Ludacris got a point, man. I agree with them. Hip hop in the early 2000s, I think if you was an artist, it was tough because you had to be in that top criteria to be on TV. And I'm going to tell you something, Luda said the competition he had to face in order to succeed was at a high level because you had artists like Eminem. We all know how big Eminem was. My name is who? Chicka Slim Shady. Yeah, Jay-Z, of course. DMX. We already know the dog he was, DMX. He had 2 #1 albums in the same year. So that was big. New York was still representing in the early 2000s now. You had 50 Cent came in the game. When 50 came, we all saw what happened with 50. He did his thing, Still had Nas. We still had Snoop Dogg. He was still representing in the early 2000s. Snoop was still going. And then we can't forget about Kanye West when he came in the game with that College Dropout. seen what his album did. They did numbers. And we all can't forget about Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne came in the game and started tearing it up, man. Can't forget about Wayne. Still up there up north when Midwest Chicago with it, like Lupe Fiasco. He was doing something. T.I. got in the game. He blew up. And then we already know how Ja Rule was doing it. Ja Rule was ruling the industry for a minute in the early 2000s. Shit, Ja Rule, man, every song he had hit #1, video-wise. And Ja Rule was the man, though. I got to give it to him now. Now, 50 came and crushed him and hurt his career some, but before 50 came, it was Ja Rule. You know, then down south, we had Juvenile. Mystical was tearing it up. Then on the female side, we had Missy Elliott. Can't forget about Missy. Timberland and them. Missy Elliott was tearing the game up. Her style came and it was like, damn, who this female is? She represented for the Timberland and them, they side too, you know. And we already know Young Jeezy. He came in the game with Trap or Die. Mike Jones, Gucci, Fabulous, Fabulous. So, you know, we were early 2000s, you know, it was tough. If you was an artist in the early 2000s, man, you had to do numbers to get on TV, to be in them top 10s, so people could see you and know who you are. And I think, you know, that era, it was a tough. But I was just thinking, imagine if they would have had internet like now in their era. Do y'all think the game would have been watered down or something? Because everybody be on the internet leaking music and, you know, you think it would have been watered down, or they had the best shot because we had to go buy CDs and watch them on TV? So you think that's the reason why they was, you know, doing their thing? Or why they stayed relevant long? Because the internet wasn't around. And you had to literally go buy CDs, whether they were burnt CDs. You know, down in Mississippi, we had people that were selling burnt CDs, $5. Hey, we had to get it how we live, you know. But if I was an artist, you know, I wouldn't have liked it. But hey, you know, we got it how we live in Mississippi. But, you know, I just wanted to, you know, piggyback on Ludacris when he said the early 2000s was the toughest hip-hop era. And Luda did his thing in that era. And to this day, you can see Luda, he's still on top. Mostly all them artists are still on top. Making me think, shit, they got their money, they got the money they deserve. Because I heard now these streams and all that, they don't even know how the numbers come out. I saw Yuck Mouth said you got to sell like 15,000 streams. 15,000 streams of your album for one sale, one CD sale. So that's like you selling 15,000 streams for $15 to $20, probably $10. Now that ain't something ain't right with that. But what I think, man, they need to go back to CDs. You know, bring back, hey, if an artist want to make money streaming, we see how the labels, they taking everything streaming. Because you can't get no control on the numbers of the stream. But CDs, you can sell them directly hand to hand and get cash. You know, that was the hustle. That was the hip-hop hustle, the rapper hustle. Burning their own CDs, getting out there selling them. But the internet, man, came and took the independent hustle away. And we got these streams, and they're like the labels, they getting over. But yeah, man, I got to agree with Ludacris, man. That era is the era I came up in. And man, the music was, the early 2000 music is still relevant to this day. Because it wasn't really microwave. I'm not going to say it's the golden era, because before then, you got to go back to the Tupacs. You know what I'm saying? The No Limits, the Cash Moneys, the Scarfaces, the Ice Cubes, Snoops, the Dre's. You know what I'm saying? Up north, De La Soul, them, wu-tang. You know, Big, you know, that era there. Now, that era was classical too. But what I think about that era, you know, they were lyricists. They were spitting lyrics. And the way I think now this generation is dumbed down so bad to the point that they can't even understand them type of lyrics no more. Like Country Wayne said, oh shit, you hurt my brain. I can't think that hard. This generation here don't want to think. See, when you listen to the golden era, the Wu-Tang, you had to think. They was spitting bar lyrics. So you had to think and be like, oh, I caught that, oh. But see, this generation here, when they hear that, it just sound like Chinese words to them. They hear it, just going through one ear and not the other. They ain't getting nothing out of it. They can't understand it because you got to think. And this generation right here do not want to think. So therefore, that's why these artists are simple-minded. They just spitting simple words. And all they want to do is bounce to the beat and yell out simple words. He came home. He came home. That's the whole song. But back in the day, they gonna say something to make you think. I'm talking about spitting lyrics, bars. And us MCs, you know, we like to do. We sitting back, you know, smoke you a little something, you tune in, you like, God damn, hey, that nigga snap. And you like that no more. These youngsters, man, this generation, man, dumb down. That shit hurt their brain trying to listen to some bone or something. Hey, man, what is that? They can't get it. But I'm so glad I came up in that era, man. You know, we read books and we wrote with pencils and stuff. This era don't know nothing about that. The only thing this era gonna read is comments in the section. They want to read comments or some mess so they can laugh or they can type something crazy back. But reading a book and trying to understand music, you know, lyrics, man, this generation ain't finna do that. So, you know, I'm glad I came up in the early 2000 era. That was my time because, hey, we getting the best of both worlds. We understand the lyrics and, you know, all the good music that is still relevant to this day. And we get to hear some of this new music. We understand these youngsters and what they talking about. Even though their music is not long form, they music is short lived, but you know, I see how it is. I see how the game is. And it's cool, you know, everything, you know, shit got to revolve. But what I'm saying is that, like Ludacris said, the early 2000s, it was a tough era, man. And Ludacris is right. So shout out to Ludacris and Nelly in the whole early 2000 era, what gave me my memories and my era where I came up in to shape and mold me to the good music that I used to listen to all those great artists that I named. Shout out to them, man, because, hey, we did have the best of that world. Straight up. Like I say, man, hey, if you made it this far in the video, like the video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. And as always, I'm coming back with more flavor. And it's all good. It's your boy, Mean Joe Green. Love. I'm about.